picture a scene right out of a well, like a tense nautical thriller. You have this massive, heavily armored battleship.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And it is absolutely tearing through the ocean. But the conditions are just terrible. We are talking thick, pea soup fog.
Visibility is basically zero.
Virtually zero. The sea is churning. Engines are roaring in the background. And on the bridge, the captain is just staring into this gray void.
Sounds incredibly stressful.
It is.
Yeah.
And suddenly a light pierces through the fog, dead ahead. It is right in their path, and it's not moving.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So the captain, filled with the kind of, that arrogance you only get when you are steering thousands of tons of steel, he grabs the radio.
Let me guess. He tells them to get out of the way.
Exactly. He orders the light ahead to move immediately. Change your heading, or else. And through the static, a voice replies, totally unbothered, giving a response that is just absolutely shocking.
Which is?
We are a lighthouse, sir. You change your course.
That is, it's such a brilliant, arresting image. The sheer hubris of this man meeting absolute, immovable reality.
Exactly. And the reason we are starting with that image for our deep dive today is because it perfectly encapsulates the core tension we are going to explore.
Yeah.
We all laugh at the captain. We think, what an idiot.
Right, because it's so obviously foolish.
But the uncomfortable truth we have to face right out of the gate is that, well, most of us are acting exactly like that captain every single day.
We really are.
That lighthouse represents reality. It is the immovable truth of our circumstances, the economy, our difficult coworkers, and most importantly, our own internal emotional state.
And that arrogant captain.
Yeah.
That represents what the psychological literature calls emotional rigidity.
Emotional rigidity.
Right. It's this demanding, inflexible insistence that the world and our own feelings, for that matter, should just get out of our way.
And that's why we're digging into all these sources today, because it feels like everyone is hitting this wall.
It is the invisible crisis of our modern world. We are operating in an environment defined by intense friction and hyperstimulation.
That's a digital overload.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shifting corporate landscapes, personal anxieties, and when we meet that friction with rigidity, when we literally scream at the lighthouse to move here, we crash.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative, and what we really need to synthesize from the research today, is how to build what is emerging in the literature as process-oriented adaptability.
Process-oriented adaptability.
Okay. It is the shift from being that rigid captain to becoming like a highly skilled navigator of your own psychological waters.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's figure out why we get stuck at the wheel in the first place. When I look at emotional rigidity, a huge part of this lock steering wheel seems to be driven by our internal chatterbox.
Oh, the chatterbox.
We all have this voice in our heads. And let's be honest, it is rarely saying, wow, you look great today, and your ability to synthesize complex data is unparalleled.
I wish my internal voice said that.
Right. It is usually a relentless, catastrophic critic. It tells you things like, you are absolutely useless, or everyone in this meeting knows you are a total fraud.
You can never, ever change.
Yeah. So where does that even come from?
Well, the chatterbox is essentially an outdated internal algorithm. It was built during our early developmental years, formed by, past traumas, social conditioning, and evolutionary survival instincts.
So it's trying to help.
In a way. Its primary goal isn't to make you happy or successful. Its primary goal is to keep you safe from perceived social and physical threats.
Just keep you alive.
Exactly. The problem isn't that this voice exists. The human brain is a thought-generating machine. It can produce noise.
Sure.
The true danger of emotional rigidity is the absolute, unquestioning authority we hand over to that noise.
But this is what I don't get, and I really want to challenge this dynamic for you, the listener. If this chatterbox is so consistently harmful, so deeply negative and restrictive, why on earth do we trust it so implicitly?
It's a great question.
Because I was thinking about this and it hit me. It is literally like taking financial advice from a toddler.
A toddler, I like that.
Think about it. You would never, ever hand your retirement portfolio over to a 3-year-old who is currently throwing a tantrum on the floor because their juice box is empty.
No, you definitely would not.
Yet we hand our entire psychological well-being, our self-worth, and our career decisions over to this panicked, irrational, internal voice every single day. Why do we do that?
The toddler analogy hits the nail on the head, but the reason we trust the toddler is because the toddler is speaking in our own voice.
Oh, Wow.
right? It
Oh,
doesn't feel like an external advisor. It feels like the core truth of who we are.
that is, yeah, that's chilling.
The danger of emotional rigidity is a phenomenon called over-identification. We do not just hear the thought, I am a failure. We literally become the thought.
We fuse with it.
Exactly. We fuse with it. It's a complete lack of psychological distance. And by becoming prisoners to these outdated internal rules, individuals they lose their full potential.
And I imagine this scales up.
Oh, absolutely. Entire corporate cultures become rigid and fragile because they are built by people who are collectively trapped in this exact same mental inertia.
So we are essentially hallucinating that this panicked voice is our core identity. That is terrifying.
It really is. This raises an important question, though, about how we currently try and usually fail to manage this internal conflict.
Right, because clearly whatever default strategies we are using aren't working. If this crisis is as widespread as the data suggests, people are just fundamentally failing to process this friction.
They are failing because the default human responses to uncomfortable emotions are inherently flawed.
So how do we fix it?
Well, to understand how to fix the rigidity, we have to look at the first major system in our deep dive today, the work of Dr. Susan David and her framework of emotional agility.
Emotional agility. And we need to be really careful defining this, really.
Very careful, because popular culture often gets it totally wrong. Emotional agility is not about putting on a brave face.
It's not toxic positivity.
Far from it. It is not about forcing yourself to be positive or hiding your pain or pretending you aren't terrified when, say, your entire industry is collapsing.
So what is it based on?
Her framework actually leans heavily on the philosophy of the renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl.
Okay, his work is incredible.
It is. And there's a concept in Frankl's work that is completely foundational to mastering psychological adaptability. He proposed that between a stimulus, which is anything that happens to you, right?
Like a rude email.
A rude email, a failed project, a sudden pang of anxiety.
Hmm.
Between that stimulus and your response,
Yeah.
what you actually do about it, there is a space.
A space.
Yes, it might be a microsecond, it might be a long intentional pause, but in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. That is a beautiful concept.
And emotional agility is the deliberate practice of expanding that space, resting in it, and utilizing it, rather than just reacting on biological autopilot.
But it seems like, I mean, let's be real. In the heat of the moment, when the email arrives or the boss yells, that space collapses completely. We just react.
You do.
And the research highlights two very specific, very common traps that cause us to collapse that space. They categorize people who fall into these traps as the bottlers and the brooders.
Yes, the bogglers and the brooders.
I want to dig into these because they are so uncomfortable to recognize in yourself. Let's look at the bottlers first.
Okay, let's do it.
These are the people who suppress everything. On the outside, they are the picture of absolute stoic calm. They are the coworker who just smiles and nods when the executive team completely scraps the 6-month project they've been working on day and night.
Right. And the defining characteristic of a bottler is this deeply held, often unconscious belief that difficult emotions are a distraction or a weakness.
Like it's unprofessional to care.
Exactly. They operate under the illusion that they can simply opt out of feeling bad. They think that by ignoring the sadness, the frustration, or the anger, they're demonstrating strength.
But biologically and psychologically, the human system does not work that way, does it?
No, it absolutely doesn't. You
Uh-huh.
cannot selectively numb emotion. If you numb the bad, you inevitably numb the joy, the passion, and the creativity.
And the emotion doesn't just evaporate because you ignored it. The imagery that comes to mind is, well, this unexpressed emotion builds up like molten lava beneath the Earth's crust.
It's always looking for a fissure.
Exactly. When I was reading the sources about suppression, I immediately thought of the beach ball analogy.
Hey, that's a classic.
Trying to suppress intense internal negative feedback is exactly like trying to hold a giant, fully inflated beach ball underwater.
It's a highly accurate physical representation of a psychological state.
Right, because think about the sheer physical mechanics of doing that. It takes an immense amount of continuous energy. Your arms are shaking, your core is tense.
You're constantly adjusting your grip because the ball keeps trying to slip up to the surface.
Yes. You can't swim, you can't talk to the people around you, you can't actually enjoy the water. You are completely consumed by the effort of keeping this thing hidden beneath the surface.
And you can only do it for so long.
Eventually, your arms give out, and the beach ball explodes violently out of the water, usually smacking you right in the face.
And in the real world, that beach ball exploding looks like a sudden, disproportionate outburst of rage over a jammed office printer.
Or a complete physical burnout.
Exactly, or chronic, unexplained exhaustion.
Yeah.
The bottler deletes Viktor Frankl's space entirely by refusing to acknowledge the stimulus.
So that's the bottler. On the exact opposite side of the spectrum, you have the brooders.
Yes.
If bottlers ignore the emotion, brooders are completely consumed by it. They're the ones constantly dwelling on their pain.
Repeatedly digging up old wounds.
Yeah, to examine them over and over. It is like they are holding a magnifying glass to every slight, every failure, every moment of anxiety, playing it on a continuous high-definition loop in their heads.
Until they can't see anything else in the room.
Right.
See, the brooder gets trapped inside the space. They acknowledge the stimulus, but they are paralyzed by it.
They can't move forward.
No. They can never move forward to a productive response because they are endlessly ruminating on how unfair the stimulus was, or even worse, how flawed they must be to have experienced it.
They mistake obsessing over an emotion for actually processing it.
Exactly. Neither the bottler nor the brooder is practicing emotional agility. They are both profoundly rigid.
Okay, if bottling and brooding are the traps, how do we actually clear the mechanism? How do we expand the space without getting trapped in it?
The transition out of these states relies on a technique called healthy emotional labeling.
Healthy emotional labeling, and there is a very sharp line that distinguishes healthy labeling from the toxic habit of suppressing negative feedback.
A very sharp line.
If suppression is holding the beach ball underwater, healthy labeling is taking the beach ball out of the water, holding it up right in front of your face and saying, this is a beach ball. It is blue and yellow, and it is here.
It sounds almost insultingly simple, but the mechanics behind it are profound. Acknowledging the specific, nuanced reality of the emotion actually neutralizes its explosive power.
Really? Just saying what it is.
Yes. Because when people are stressed, they tend to use massive, vague labels. They say, I am stressed, or I am overwhelmed, or I'm freaking out.
Guilty.
We all are. But those words are huge buckets that offer no actionable information. A healthy labeler, someone practicing emotional agility, uses high-resolution language.
What does that sound like?
They might say, I am feeling a deep sense of anxiety because my project deadline was moved up, and I am feeling unappreciated because my manager didn't consult me.
Oh, wow. So you aren't suppressing the negative feedback. You are explicitly identifying the contours of it.
Exactly.
You are looking at the lighthouse and admitting it is a lighthouse, rather than pretending it is another ship or closing your eyes and hoping it goes away.
You are honoring the reality of the situation. But this brings us to a massive psychological intersection. Understanding and labeling these emotions is vital. It clears the fog so you can see the lighthouse. But that is only half the battle.
What's the other half?
The other half of the equation involves understanding the foundational lens through which you view your own potential to actually navigate the ship.
Right, because I can perfectly label my anxiety, but if I fundamentally believe I don't have the capacity to steer the ship, I'm still going to crash.
Precisely.
We have to look at the cognitive side.
Which brings us to the second system in our deep dive, the work of Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck and her mindset framework.
A completely revolutionary framework.
It really is. I want to walk through this because it completely changes how you view human potential. There is a classic visual from her research that illustrates her findings beautifully.
The puzzle experiment.
Yes, the puzzle experiment. Imagine two young kids, maybe 5 or 6 years old. They are both given a fairly difficult puzzle to solve.
Okay.
The first kid tries to fit a piece, gets it wrong, immediately gets flushed and frustrated, pushes the puzzle away, and quits. They look terrified. We've all seen that reaction.
Right. Now, the second kid is given the exact same puzzle. They make the exact same mistake. But instead of quitting, they laugh.
They laugh.
They laugh. They look at the piece with intense curiosity, they flip it over, and they excitedly try again. Same puzzle, same failure, two completely different realities.
Dr. Dweck's research revealed that these radically different reactions do not stem from a difference in innate intelligence or skill.
Which is what most people would assume, right? Oh, that kid is just better at puzzles.
Exactly. But it's not that. They stem from two fundamentally different belief systems about human ability itself. The first child is operating with what she defined as a fixed mindset.
A fixed mindset.
Yes. This is the deeply internalized belief that intelligence, talent, and core capabilities are innate, genetic, and essentially unchangeable.
You are born with a certain amount of smarts, and that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are either a math person or you aren't. You are either a natural leader or you aren't.
And if you extrapolate that out into adulthood, the terror of the fixed mindset is that every single task, every single email, every single meeting becomes a high-stakes test of your permanent, unchangeable worth.
Because if you fail,
Right. Because if you believe your intelligence is fixed, then failing at a puzzle or failing at a corporate presentation doesn't mean I haven't mastered the specific skill yet. It means I am fundamentally stupid.
it means I am a failure.
Yes. It creates an incredibly fragile identity.
The fixed mindset individual lives in constant fear of being found out. It leads to a constant, exhausting need to prove that you are smart and a profound, paralyzing fear of learning new things.
Because learning is risky.
Because learning implies that you don't already know it, which requires effort. And in the fixed mindset, having to exert effort is proof that you lack innate genius.
It's a psychological prison. Now, contrast that with the second child, the one who laughed at the mistake.
Yeah.
They are operating with a growth mindset.
The golden term.
The golden term. This is the belief that your basic abilities, whatever they are merely the starting point. The growth mindset dictates that abilities can be heavily expanded and developed through sustained effort.
Through applying proper strategies.
And crucially, through seeking help and feedback from others. It is the belief that the brain is a muscle that gets stronger with use.
So for that second child, or, the adult operating in a growth mindset, the puzzle mistake is stripped of its emotional weight.
It isn't an indictment of their core identity.
No, it is simply data. It is neutral information on how not to place that specific piece. It's feedback.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, adopting growth mindsets is an absolute prerequisite to overcoming fixed mental limitations.
Absolutely. If you remain in a fixed mindset, you will inevitably hit a ceiling of your own making, usually the exact moment you encounter a problem your innate talent can't instantly solve.
But here's where it gets really interesting and where I see a major point of friction in actually living this out.
Okay, what's the friction?
Well, I can read Dweck's book, right? I can intellectually understand that I need a growth mindset, but when I actually make a massive mistake at work, my heart still pounds, my palms still sweat.
The physical reaction.
Yes, the growth mindset alone, just knowing the concept, isn't enough if you don't have the emotional fuel to drive it. I can know I should try again, but if my internal emotional state is paralyzed by the fear of failure, if I am a bottler suppressing the panic or a brooder drowning in it, that intellectual knowledge of the growth mindset is totally useless.
It's like having a Ferrari with a highly tuned engine but absolutely no gas in the tank.
Exactly. So why does that happen?
That is the vital connection. Cognitive theory requires emotional regulation to function. And to truly understand why that is why the Ferrari won't start to funk it, we have to stop looking at psychology and start looking at biology.
Geology.
We have to look under the hood at the physical neuroscience of the human brain to see what actually happens during these moments of friction.
Let's do that. Because I think when people hear mindset shifts, they think of it as just a change in attitude. They think it's soft science.
It's not.
No, we are talking about tangible biological hardware. To master psychological adaptability, we need to understand two key structures in the brain. The first is the amygdala, this small, almond-shaped cluster deep in the older part of the brain.
And the second is the prefrontal cortex, the large, highly developed area right behind your forehead.
So let's walk through the exact biology of a failure, tracking the electrical and chemical signals.
Okay, let's say you are operating with a fixed mindset, or you are a classic bottler.
Got it.
You are at your desk, you realize you made a massive calculation error on a report that went to the CEO, and your internal chatterbox instantly starts screaming that you are going to be fired, that you are a failure. What is physically happening in your brain in that microsecond?
I imagine alarms are going off.
Quite literally. What you are experiencing biologically is known as an amygdala hijack.
Amygdala hijack.
Yes. The amygdala functions as the brain's primitive evolutionary alarm system. Its primary job is to scan the environment for existential threats.
Existential, like life or death.
Right. Now, hundreds of thousands of years ago, a threat was a tiger jumping out of the bushes.
Makes sense.
But today, when you operate from a fixed mindset where your core identity is tied to being smart, a mistake on a report is perceived by the amygdala not as a learning opportunity, but as a literal life or death threat to your survival and your social standing within the tribe.
Wait, really? So the brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger and a typo?
To the amygdala, social rejection is synonymous with death. It interprets the mistake the exact same way it interprets a predator.
Wow.
It immediately triggers the sympathetic nervous system, causing a massive release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shallows.
Just total panic.
Total panic. And most importantly for our discussion, it effectively redirects blood flow away from the higher-order thinking centers of the brain. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex to prepare your body for a primitive fight, flight, or freeze response.
That is incredible. So in that moment of panic, you are literally biologically incapable of being adaptable.
Completely incapable.
You cannot access the growth mindset because the part of your brain that handles complex problem solving has been starved of oxygen and blood. Your brain thinks it is fighting for its life against a spreadsheet error.
Precisely. No wonder it's so hard to just think positively in those moments.
Right. But earlier, we talked about nuanced emotional labeling, holding the beach ball up and calling it a beach ball. How does that simple act of choosing the right words actually intervene in this primitive biological alarm system?
This is perhaps one of the most powerful, actionable insights in the neuroscientific literature. It reveals how we can manually override the autopilot.
Manually override. I like the sound of that.
When we use clear, nuanced words to identify our emotions, when we transition from the vague, panicked, I'm freaking out, to the specific, I am feeling acute disappointment because my expectation wasn't met and I fear looking incompetent, we initiate a profound biological shift.
Because language requires a different part of the brain.
Precisely. The amygdala is fast, but it is dumb. It only knows fear and aggression. It does not possess language.
Interesting.
The act of searching for, selecting, and applying a specific nuanced linguistic label requires logic, analysis, and language processing. These are complex executive functions.
And those functions live in the prefrontal cortex. So by forcing yourself to find the exact word, you are essentially forcing the blood flow back to the front of your brain.
You are manually routing the electrical signal away from the alarm system. This precise emotional labeling biologically activates the prefrontal cortex.
It wakes it back up.
Yes. And when the prefrontal cortex lights up, it sends inhibitory signals back down to the amygdala. It acts as the adult in the room. It effectively tells the amygdala, stand down, the threat is identified, it is categorized, and it is manageable. It's a spreadsheet, not a tiger.
I love that. You are using vocabulary as a biological dampening field. But this specific prefrontal cortex activation doesn't just calm you down in the short term, right? If you do this repeatedly, we see how it fundamentally improves long-term psychological adaptability.
Exactly.
And this brings in the concept of neuroplasticity. I want to really dig into this because people throw the word around a lot, but understanding the mechanics of it changes everything.
It really is the key.
Neuroplasticity is the reality that the brain isn't static like a computer hard drive. It is plastic, it is malleable, it changes its physical structure based on how you use it.
Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life.
So how does this tie into mindset shifts?
Well, when you consistently practice nuanced labeling, when you repeatedly force the prefrontal cortex to take over from the amygdala during moments of stress, you are engaging in a rigorous process called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. There's a famous axiom in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Fire together, wire together. So every time you pause and label the emotion instead of freaking out, you are literally physically forming new synaptic connections.
You are building a wider, faster, more efficient neurological highway for emotional regulation.
And simultaneously, the old, highly reactive highway used by the amygdala starts to physically degrade from lack of use.
It's like a path in the jungle. The path you walk every day gets wide and clear. The path you stop using gets overgrown and inaccessible.
I have to just marvel at that for a second. We can physically alter the density of our neural pathways. We are rewiring the physical hardware by upgrading the software.
It is empowering.
It is, but we also have to acknowledge the friction here. Bushwhacking a new trail in a dense jungle is exhausting. It physically hurts.
Oh, yeah.
That is why it is so difficult to change your mindset. Your brain wants to take the path of least resistance, which is the old amygdala highway. Building process-oriented adaptability isn't a quick software update. It is cognitive heavy lifting.
It is exhausting, which is why it requires deliberate practice. It is the ultimate manifestation of self-directed biological evolution.
Yeah.
You are architecting your own brain to face new challenges with greater resilience.
Okay, so we understand the biology. We know how the amygdala traps us, we know how the prefrontal cortex frees us, and we know that it takes effort to build the new pathways. Now it is time to bring it all together.
The synthesis.
Yes, this transitions us perfectly into the ultimate behavioral framework. This is the synthesis of everything we have discussed. The sources call this the process-oriented adaptability model.
Right, which takes Dr. David's emotional agility and Dr. Dweck's growth mindset and binds them together using the neuroscience of the prefrontal cortex.
So what's the core rule here?
The core diktat of process-oriented adaptability is this. Changing your mindset is utterly useless without properly utilizing the emotional fuel that drives it.
Mindset plus emotional fuel.
Exactly. To help us visualize exactly how to do this, the framework introduces a highly practical cognitive model known as the chessboard effect.
The chessboard effect.
Yes, and this is the key to decoupling from that internal chatterbox we talked about in the very beginning, breaking that over-identification where we think the toddler's voice is our own.
Let me try to build this analogy out for the listener, because when I grasped this, it was a massive light bulb moment. Let's think of your mind as a game of chess. You have all these pieces on the board, the knights, the rooks, the pawns, the bishops. Let's say the black pieces represent your negative thoughts, your fears, your anxieties, your fixed mindset triggers.
And the white pieces.
The white pieces represent your positive thoughts, your confidence, your successes, your growth mindset. Throughout the day, these pieces are constantly moving around. They are battling, they are capturing each other.
One moment white is winning, the next moment black is dominating.
Right. But the fundamental mistake we make, the root of emotional rigidity, is thinking that we are the pieces. When the anxiety piece takes over the board, we think, I am the black knight of anxiety. I am broken.
We fuse with the piece.
Exactly. But the chessboard effect asks you to zoom out. It clarifies how we can create distance between thoughts and identity. You aren't the pieces moving around and getting captured. You are the wide, stable wooden board where the game is being played.
Ah, I see.
The pieces come and go. The thoughts and emotions are temporary states, electrical impulses that pass over you. But the board, your core consciousness, your true identity, remains solid, spacious, and completely unharmed by the battle taking place on top of it.
When you recognize that you are the board, you immediately neutralize the existential threat of the black pieces. You realize you don't have to violently fight the anxiety. You just have to observe it resting on the board.
You can say, there is the anxiety piece making a move, instead of, I am consumed by anxiety.
This creates the space Viktor Frankl advocated for. It is a powerful cognitive diffusion technique.
It creates the space. But process-oriented adaptability goes one step further. It isn't just about peacefully observing the bad pieces. It introduces a mechanism to actually use them.
Right, because observing isn't enough.
The sources call this the emotional leakage radar. Because as we established with the bottlers, suppressed emotions always leak out. If you try to hold the beach ball under, the water still displaces.
Suppression always results in leakage, and that leakage usually manifests as unexplained irritability, chronic procrastination, physical fatigue, or passive-aggressive behavior.
So how does the radar work?
The emotional leakage radar is an active daily monitoring system. It requires you to treat those negative symptoms not as personal failures, but as highly valuable data signals.
But how do we actually demonstrate using the emotional leakage radar to convert negative stress into active fuel, like in practice?
Okay, let's say you feel a sudden, intense flash of anger at a colleague during a meeting.
Happens all the time.
Right, the radar goes off. Instead of suppressing the anger bottling or raging at the colleague brooding, you use the prefrontal cortex to label it. You look at the board and say, I am feeling threatened because my contribution wasn't acknowledged.
Okay, labeled. Then what?
Once identified, this framework teaches you to convert that negative stress into active want-to fuel for development. The frustration transforms from a roadblock into a directional sign.
A directional sign pointing where?
It points toward a skill you need to develop in your growth mindset. Perhaps the anger is actually signaling that you need to develop the skill of assertive communication or boundary setting. The emotion becomes the fuel for the growth.
The stress becomes the engine. It's brilliant. But let's take this out of the abstract. What does this all mean in the real world? All these theories, the chessboard, the radar, the neuroplasticity are great. But for you, the listener, actually trying to survive in a modern, highly demanding workplace, how does this play out?
Context is everything.
Let's transition into some real-world applications and look at how this helps us navigate the AI era and complex corporate challenges. Because the context of the modern workplace is crucial here.
We are operating in an environment where technical skills become obsolete incredibly fast. In the era of artificial intelligence, what you know today might be irrelevant in 6 months.
That's terrifying for a lot of people.
It is. And if a company is stuck in a fixed mindset, what organizational psychologists call a culture of genius, it is in grave danger. A culture of genius worships innate intelligence. It rewards people strictly for being the smartest person in the room, for never needing help, for being flawless.
And in that kind of culture, hiding mistakes becomes a literal survival imperative. Because if you make a mistake, it proves you aren't a genius. So everyone becomes a bottler, terrified of the amygdala hijack that comes with being exposed.
Exactly. Companies operating this way will collapse under the rapid changes of AI because they cannot learn. The mandatory shift must be toward a culture of development, similar to the models adopted by tech giants who prioritize continuous learning over innate brilliance.
Let's look at how this plays out on the ground. The sources provide two very detailed case studies. Let's look at case study 1, which focuses on the individual level. We have a software engineer named Kieran.
Oh, right.
Kieran is working remotely, and he is suffering heavily from digital overload. Based on our definitions, Kieran is a classic textbook bottler. Let's build out Kieran's scenario.
Okay.
He is hiding his immense stress from his team. He is on Slack all day saying, yes, absolutely, I can take that on. Then he is working crazy late nights. His glowing screen is the only light in his apartment at 2 a.m.
Ouch.
He's exhausted, he's drinking too much coffee, and ironically, because he is so fatigued, his actual coding productivity is dropping fast. He is staring at the screen, unable to solve basic problems.
If we diagnose the root cause of Kieran's behavior using our frameworks, we see it is not a time management issue. He doesn't need a new productivity app.
No.
It is a deep psychological issue. Kieran is paralyzed by a fixed mindset fear. He fundamentally believes that saying no to his manager or admitting he is overwhelmed by the new AI integration project will instantly make him look inferior or incompetent.
His internal chatterbox is telling him, if you can't handle this, you don't belong here.
Yes. His amygdala is hijacked by the perceived social threat of setting a boundary.
So he just keeps bottling. He keeps holding the beach ball underwater until his arms give out. So how does process-oriented adaptability save Kieran? What is the specific intervention?
The intervention starts with the emotional leakage radar. Kieran has to notice his own exhaustion, his brain fog, and his growing resentment toward his manager.
Notice the leakage.
Right. Instead of bottling it further, he has to apply nuanced emotional labeling. He sits down, perhaps with a pen and paper, and writes out exactly what he is feeling. He forces the blood flow back to his prefrontal cortex.
What does he write?
He writes, I am feeling terrified of being fired because I do not understand this new code base, and I am exhausted from hiding it.
And right there, he creates the chessboard effect. He realizes he is not an incompetent worker. That is just a piece on the board. He is just experiencing the temporary emotion of capacity overload.
Exactly. This biological calming allows him to engage his growth mindset. He realizes that having a difficult conversation about workload and admitting a gap in his technical knowledge is a skill he can develop, not a fixed flaw in his character.
He uses the anxiety as fuel.
Yes. He speaks openly with his manager, not with vague complaints, but with specific data about his bandwidth and where he needs upskilling.
And by doing this, he steps out of the rigidity, restructures his tasks, and actually achieves a sustainable work-life balance while learning the new skills required.
He used the negative emotion as the fuel to fix the problem. That is individual mastery.
Now, let's scale this up. Case study 2 focuses on a team facing complex corporate challenges. We have an AI startup. They are working on massive, highly complex, multi-million-dollar data models.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. But they are plagued by a toxic environment. It is a crash and blame culture, heavily driven by their visionary but rigid team leader. When a model fails, the leader immediately hunts for a scapegoat to publicly reprimand.
We can immediately analyze the resulting behavior of this culture of genius. Because the leader aggressively punishes failure, the team naturally adapts to survive.
They start hiding things.
They start hiding small data errors. Worse, it breeds a highly dangerous groupthink. No one wants to stick their neck out and challenge a bad idea from the leader, because if the challenge fails, they take the blame.
So innovation completely stalls because everyone on the team is terrified of the amygdala hijack that comes from the leader's wrath.
Exactly.
This sounds like a nightmare scenario, but it is so common. How do you fix a whole team trapped in emotional rigidity?
The solution outlined here requires us to see how to use mental contrasting techniques to navigate complex corporate team challenges effectively.
Mental contrasting, when I first read it, it sounded a bit like positive visualization, like The Secret. But the mechanics of it are much more robust, aren't they?
It is significantly more robust, and it actually exposes the danger of mere positive visualization.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mental contrasting is a deeply pragmatic, almost uncomfortable exercise. It requires holding two competing realities in your mind simultaneously.
What are the two realities?
It is the process of vividly visualizing success, say, successfully launching the new flawless data model without any bugs, while simultaneously, and this is the crucial part, anticipating the harsh, realistic obstacles that will stand in the way.
Why is positive visualization alone dangerous?
Because if you only visualize success, your brain actually relaxes. It releases dopamine as if you've already achieved the goal, which severely saps your physiological motivation to actually do the hard work.
Wow. And if you only focus on the obstacles?
Then you become a brooder. You drown in anxiety and never start.
So mental contrasting is about creating a cognitive friction. You visualize the dream, but then you forcefully drag yourself back to the messy reality of the obstacle.
Exactly. For this AI team, the intervention involved a structured mental contrasting session led by an outside facilitator.
How did it go?
They mapped out the desired outcome of the project. Then, they were required to list every potential failure point and team dynamic issue that could ruin it.
Oh, man.
Crucially, they had to list their own behavioral obstacles, including their known tendency to hide mistakes from the leader.
That takes guts.
It does. But by anticipating the obstacles before they happen in the real world, they remove the shock and fear. They pre-plan their responses. If X fails, we will do Y, and no one gets blamed.
It fundamentally shifted the culture from crash and blame to anticipate and solve.
They used the growth mindset to realize that failure was an expected, necessary part of the complex data modeling process, not an indictment of the team's innate talent.
They turned the obstacles into the roadmap. They built a system that expected the pieces to move on the chessboard rather than freaking out every time a piece was captured.
That is incredibly powerful for a corporate environment.
It really is. But these case studies are great for analyzing others. However, I know you, the listener, need a personal toolkit. You need something you can start applying today, right now, at your desk or in your home to build this for yourself.
Yes, we need to explain the step-by-step process for mastering emotional agility and growth mindsets.
Let's do it. It is essential that we structure this toolkit properly, right?
Yes. These practical exercises are the daily reps required for neuroplasticity. They are how you build the fluid, responsive navigation system that replaces the locked steering wheel of emotional rigidity.
Let's dive into Tool 1. This is where we use the if-then strategy for daily tasks. I absolutely love this because it is highly actionable.
It's so practical.
You don't need a therapist. You don't need to go on a silent retreat to do this. You can do it sitting in traffic or at your desk. Here's the example from the research. If my internal voice tries to scare me by saying, "You can't do this presentation, you are going to look foolish," then I will focus on my breath for 1 minute, recognize it is just a thought on the chessboard, and continue my work.
It's like code.
Right. It sounds almost like basic computer programming. If this condition is met, execute this command.
That is exactly what it is. Psychologists call these implementation intentions. And I can elaborate on why this simple algorithmic approach is so profoundly effective biologically.
Please do.
Remember the amygdala hijack. In the moment of acute stress, your cognitive resources are rapidly depleted. Blood flow has left the prefrontal cortex. You literally do not have the brain power in that microsecond to invent a complex coping strategy on the fly.
You will default to your oldest, most rigid habit bottling or brooding.
You're too panicked to be creative.
Precisely. The if-then strategy works because it is a preloaded decision. You make the decision before the stress hits, while you are calm and rational. When the internal chatterbox screams, the IF condition is met, and the then behavior is executed almost automatically.
It acts as a cognitive bypass. It routes the response around the panicked amygdala and directly into the prefrontal cortex.
It takes the willpower out of the equation entirely. But I want to acknowledge the friction here, too. It is really hard to remember your if-then statement when you are exhausted or caught off guard.
You might fail.
You might yell at the coworker anyway. But the growth mindset says that failing to use the tool perfectly the first time isn't proof that you are broken. It just means you need more reps to build that neural pathway.
Exactly.
And speaking of reps, let's look at Tool 2, which focuses on deeper accumulated emotional processing. Tool 1 is for the immediate sparks. Tool 2 is for the lava building up underground. The literature outlines a specific method. We need to practice journaling to process emotions.
Yes, based on the work of Dr. James Pennebaker. Dr. Pennebaker's research on expressive writing is a cornerstone of emotional agility. The specific rules for this emotional processing are strict, but they yield incredible results.
What are the rules?
The instruction is to write for 20 continuous minutes a day about your deepest emotions, resentments, and fears.
Okay, 20 minutes.
The critical parameter here is that you must write with zero judgment. Do not worry about grammar. Do not worry about spelling. Do not worry about sounding rational or like a good person. Just let the raw, ugly, unvarnished emotion flow onto the page.
You are essentially doing a raw data dump of your internal chatterbox.
You are letting the toddler scream onto the paper.
I love that. But the sources include a crucial twist to this rule that I found absolutely fascinating, and it is the key to why this works. After you spend 20 exhausting minutes pouring your soul, your anger, and your fear onto the paper, you throw the paper away?
You physically destroy it.
Tear it up, shred it, throw it in
No.
the trash. When I read that, I really had to actively analyze why. Why wouldn't you keep it to track your progress?
Right, like a diary.
Yeah. But it hit me, it's not about keeping a record of your trauma. It isn't a historical document. The act of throwing it away is the physical manifestation of stepping out.
Is the chessboard effect in physical motion.
Yes. By putting the thoughts on paper, they are literally no longer inside you. You have externalized them. And by throwing the paper in the trash, you are creating that crucial, tangible distance from the thoughts.
They were just pieces.
The thoughts were just pieces. You put them on the board, you looked at them, and now you are physically sweeping them off into the garbage.
That is a profound insight into the mechanism. The physical act of destruction finalizes the cognitive diffusion. You have acknowledged the emotion, healthy labeling, which satisfies the need to not be a bottler, and then you have detached your identity from it by destroying it, which prevents you from becoming a brooder who obsessively rereads their own pain journal.
You process the emotion and then you release it.
You clear the cognitive load so you can engage your growth mindset for the actual tasks ahead. It is a brilliant, complete cycle of process-oriented adaptability.
So if you want to master this, you use the if-then strategy to catch the daily stressors and write around the amygdala, and you use the Pennebaker journaling to process and release the deeper emotional leakage. That is a robust, step-by-step process.
It really is.
As we bring this deep dive full circle, I want to return to our opening imagery. Imagine that cinematic camera panning away from the arrogant captain on the battleship, screaming at the fog.
Okay, pull them back.
We pull back, moving from that stormy, chaotic, churning sea up toward the sky, and there, cutting through the darkness and the fog, is the lighthouse beam. It is steady, it is immovable reality.
The lighthouse.
But right beside it, hovering in the air, the literature gives us one final, perfect visual: a gyroscope.
Oh, a gyroscope.
It is spinning rapidly in absolutely perfect balance, constantly adjusting and adapting to every tiny shift in gravity, wind, and momentum.
The synthesis of these images beautifully summarizes the core philosophy of everything we have discussed today. The lighthouse is the immovable reality of your circumstances and your true emotions. You cannot command them to move, you must navigate them.
And the gyroscope?
The gyroscope is process-oriented adaptability. The final takeaway here is that life is a continuous dynamic journey, not a fixed destination. We must not fear challenges or mistakes, nor should we suppress our pain.
We must connect our internal emotional powers, our agility, with a growth mindset.
Because the profound truth of neuroplasticity is that leaders, innovators, and resilient individuals are not born. They are not innate geniuses.
No.
They are transformed. They are forged through continuous effort, emotional honesty, and the relentless daily practice of rewiring their own minds.
They do the hard work to rewire the machine. Now, we always like to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over, something provocative to take with you into your week that builds on everything we've uncovered. And looking at that spinning gyroscope metaphor, I think it raises a fascinating question about how we view peace.
Consider this: a gyroscope only maintains its perfect upright balance because it is in constant dynamic motion.
The friction and the movement are what keep it stable.
Exactly. If it stops spinning, if it becomes rigid, it immediately falls over. If your internal psychological life is a gyroscope, is it possible that our modern cultural obsession with trying to find a permanent, perfect, unchanging Zen state of mind is actually what causes our emotional rigidity?
Oh, wow.
Does true peace require us to never stop moving, adapting, and growing?
Does true peace require us to never stop moving? I love that. The friction is the point. Think about that the next time you feel the urge to lock the steering wheel and scream at the lighthouse. It is time to turn on your emotional radar, step back to see the whole chessboard, and start the very real, very biological work of your growth journey. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.